Hi everyone, it's a Sunday morning and I wanted to make a video, and I got the idea from Marv, Beatle Vinyl 85, who started a thread where he wanted us to show some albums that we feel have really good album titles, favorite album titles. And it sounds like a common kind of idea that you would think would have been done before around here in the vinyl community, but I don't recall it being done. So to me, it's like a fresh idea, and I thought that was good, but when I actually set out to do this, I went through my collection over here, all over the place, and it was a lot harder than I thought it was going to be. I couldn't really find a lot of really good titles, although a few came to mind right off the bat as soon as I heard about Marv's idea. And I encourage everybody to start doing their own videos, come up with your favorite albums titles, not necessarily favorite records. These are not your favorite record albums, although they may well be. It could be an album that you don't like at all, really, but you like the title. It's just about favorite titles. But be sure to give Marv, Beatle Vinyl 85, the credit for starting this, because I didn't start it. Okay. First one that came to mind immediately, right at the snap of the fingers, was an album title I've always liked from the day it was released. And I guess, therefore, it has to be my favorite all-time album title. It's Joan Jett and the Blackhearts. It's their album called Glorious Results of a Misspent Youth. And that fits the persona of Joan Jett, the tough rocker. But what I also like about it is I remember her saying in an interview at the time in 1984 that the title actually came from an episode of the TV show The Honeymooners, when Ralph Cramden is playing pool with Ed Norton, and he tells Norton, stand aside and I'll show you the glorious results of a misspent youth. And that's where she took the title from. So I really like that idea, and this is always the first album title that comes to mind when I think of favorite album titles. Okay, it's funny, upon looking at certain artists that I thought would have really good titles, like Bob Dylan, for example. I thought Bob Dylan is so poetic and he has so many good lyrics. I thought that there's got to be a lot of good titles in there, but I went through all of them and none of them really knocked me out, so, except for maybe Knocked Out Loaded. But so I didn't use Bob Dylan. The Rolling Stones, on the other hand, the Rolling Stones have a few titles I like. I decided to go with Goat's Head Soup, which I think it's kind of a sick title, and you don't really see it on the actual cover, but Goat's Head Soup is one of my favorite Rolling Stones titles. I probably would have preferred Sticky Fingers. I think Sticky Fingers is even a better title than this, simply because of what it implies, I suppose. But actually, at this point, I don't have a really nice copy of Sticky Fingers. I used to have one, but it wasn't in great shape, so I have to get an upgrade of that. I went to Led Zeppelin for In Through the Outdoor. This is also an underrated album as far as I'm concerned. A lot of people don't really think much of this album. I like it. In Through the Outdoor. I like clever titles, kind of play on words, or what have you. By the way, I forgot to mention, I have 10 albums here. Marv asked us to list our top 10. These are not necessarily even the top 10 titles that I could think of. Just the ones that, when I looked through my collection, came to mind as I came across them. There may be some even better than this, but now this is cheating a little bit. Okay, I wanted to get Elvis Presley in there, and I've always liked this, but I'm not sure that that's the title. It says on there, 50 million Elvis fans can't be wrong. But that's really not the title of the album. It's more like a little bit of hype that goes with it. It's really Elvis's Golden Records Volume 2 is really the official name of it. So I'm kind of cheating there a little bit by having 50 million Elvis fans can't be wrong. But the way it's displayed up there, it's almost as if it was an album title. This is also definitely one of the most iconic record covers that could be used for that video if we ever made one. Okay, this is a title I liked, Susie Quattro. It's called Susie and Other Four-Letter Words. This is pretty clever. I was looking at my Tom Petty collection, and I kind of came across Damn the Torpedoes, a play on Man the Torpedoes. So went along with that one. Now, the question was whether I was going to have any Beatles-related items in here. You know, even though I love the Beatles, and I think they're the greatest when it comes to songwriting, music, and so on, they don't exactly have great album titles, with one or two exceptions. I decided that I've always liked the title Rubber Soul, and I'm showing the U.S. version here, the one that we grew up on in the States. Rubber Soul, that's a cool title. I like that. Also, the album Revolver, because the album revolves round and round, is also good. But it's funny how I noticed a lot of these earlier groups from the 60s and the 50s, a lot of them have generic titles like, you know, Meet the Beatles, or, I don't know, Elvis Presley, self-titled albums, or, you know, The Searchers, you know, some of them just have titles like, you know, their next album, the second album, you know. Okay, I wanted to stick with the theme to finish this up with the solo Beatles. I've gotten 3 of them. I only wanted to name 10 albums in total, so I didn't want to go over. I'll have to leave poor George Harrison out. I went with John Lennon's Shaved Fish, which I always thought was a cool title. Don't know exactly what it means, but I always liked that title. And it's a hits compilation in 1975. But I always thought Shaved Fish was cool. Instead of it saying Best of John Lennon, Greatest Hits John Lennon, something like that, Shaved Fish was really interesting because it's not really all classic stuff on there. I mean, there's some hits and misses. So that's why it's not a Greatest Hits. Okay, when it comes to Paul McCartney, this is the magic of being able to edit, folks. I had already showed an album, and then I remembered after I uploaded the video that, hey, you know, there was an album title by Paul McCartney that I like even better. Originally, I was showing the album Back to the Egg. I like the title Back to the Egg. But if I'm going to only narrow it down to 10 albums altogether, and I just want to have one Paul album, I went with this live album, which is called Paul is Live, which you wouldn't think is really that great of a title all on its own. But it's a spoof on the Paul is Dead gimmick. So with that understanding and that context, I think it's very clever. Paul is Live as a title of a live album by Paul. So that's my pick for him. And I found, to wrap this up, an album by Ringo Starr that I actually like the title. It's another hits compilation like the John Lennon. And it's called Starstruck. Get it? Ringo Starr, Starstruck. Very clever. And you might be able to read that down there. So, sorry about the glare of the camera when we make these videos, folks. That's it. It wasn't easy to do this, as I say. You know, I'd be curious to hear other people's picks. I thought it was going to be a lot simpler. I was going to have so many that I would go over 10, but quite frankly, I found it difficult just to come up with 10. You know, it's a really clever or appealing album title that just hits you between the eyes is not that easy to come by. Thanks, everybody. Have a good weekend.